Hey guys, tonight we slip beneath the skin of a bitter medieval winter, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you wish you'd been born as a cat curled up on a bishop's lap. You're not in a warm castle though, you're a peasant. The thatch roof leaks, your breath fogs in your own home. The wind doesn't knock politely, it barges in like it pays rent. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this one without a few bad dreams. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I want to know whose night I'm borrowing. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the field, the ground beneath your leather-wrapped feet already crisp with frost. It's not quite winter yet, but the air has changed. It carries that sharp warning only the old and the observant recognize, a stillness that says, this year might be crueler than the last. Your tunic is homespun, scratchy wool that clings to you with the loyalty of a resentful dog. There's a hole under your arm, and you tug your cloak tighter, which doesn't help. It's made of rough hemp, stiff with age, and smells faintly of turnips and old sweat. The cold slithers through anyway, winding up your spine like a damp snake with icy fangs. You know what's coming. Everyone in the village does. There's no such thing as surprise frost here, just silent dread and an unspoken race against time. You pass a neighbor who's thatching his roof in a hurry, stuffing straw between the beams. His ladder looks like it might give up at any moment, but he doesn't slow down. Nobody slows down. By the time you reach your own hovel, your fingers have started to stiffen. You don't have gloves, of course. What are you, a noble? You flex your hands, slap them against your thighs, and push open the crooked wooden door with your shoulder. Inside, your wife's already crouched near the hearth, coaxing yesterday's embers with careful breath. The children huddle beside her, wrapped in whatever scraps could be salvaged. One is wearing what used to be a grain sack. Another is bundled in a patched-up cloak that once belonged to your grandfather, who probably froze in it too. There's a pot hanging above the fire. It smells like onions and hope. You don't ask what's in it. You just nod. She nods back. That's about all the warmth you can spare tonight. The wind winds through the gaps in the walls. You stuff straw between the beams where the cold's gotten bold. It pokes right back at you, as if to say, you think you're clever? Still, it's better than nothing. You look up. The roof has held, mostly. The thatch is old and thin, though, and there's already a dark patch forming above the sleeping mat. You shift your gaze to the family's bedding, a mound of old blankets, flattened straw, and fur remnants that may or may not be from a dog. The kids will sleep there tonight, pressed together like loaves in a baker's oven, and so will you. Everyone will. That's just how it is. Body heat is life. Dignity is for summer. You try to distract yourself by sharpening tools. Your knife's dull. Your axe is worse. You wonder whether the forest will even give up any firewood tomorrow, or if it'll be another day of scraping bark and pretending it burns the same. Outside, a dog howls. Then another. Wolves, maybe. Or something less noble. Something with 2 legs and fewer scruples. You latch the door with a piece of twisted rope and a silent prayer. Not that the saints have time for peasants like you, but still, you mutter one, just in case. Funny thing is, historians still argue whether winter in the Middle Ages was as brutal as folks remember, or if the fear of it just got passed down in the bone memory of every child born to a dirt floor. You'd bet your last chicken it was real, and you don't have a chicken. Speaking of which, your wife gestures. Time to eat. You gather around the pot and share what you can. 1 ladle per mouth. No more, no less. There's no meat, of course, but the onions are strong and the heat alone feels luxurious. You try to smile at your youngest, but your face is so tight with cold it barely moves. She smiles anyway. Kids are good at pretending they're warm. You toss another log on the fire, one of the last good ones, and settle in for the night. Tomorrow you'll start burning the furniture. Again. There's a scrap of news passed quietly. Old Thomas down the lane says it might snow before week's end. Someone else says the wise woman had a dream about frozen sheep. You all laugh, but it's the nervous kind. You know what frozen sheep mean. Less wool, less food, less hope. You lie down last, always last. Father's job. You press your back to the others, feeling the awkward bumps of elbows and ribs. The warmth spreads slowly, grudgingly. It's not comfort, it's survival. You close your eyes and try not to think about how many nights are still to come. And even though you're used to it, this heavy, bone-deep cold, every year it feels new again. Like winter has forgotten it already killed you last time. But you're still here, and the fire, small as it is, still burns. You wake before dawn, though wake might be generous. It's more like drifting up from a place of half sleep, where your dreams are oddly flavored with smoke, snoring, and that one kid's cold foot jammed squarely against your stomach. The fire's long gone to ash. The room is silent except for the occasional creak from the wooden beams, and someone's chest wheezing like bellows, with a hole in them. You don't want to move. Every joint protests. Your nose is numb, your toes feel like small stones, and your breath mists visibly in the gloom. But you sit up anyway because you know the rule. The earlier you rise, the better your chance at warmth. Not comfort, not joy, just slightly less shivering. You shuffle to the hearth. The ashes are cold and reluctant, but you prod and coax like a desperate lover. There's one coal left. Thank the saints. You guard it with your hands like it's a newborn. You feed it kindling, bits of hay, dry bark, a splintered spoon, and blow gently until you get a flicker, then a thread of smoke, and finally, a flame. The fire returns like an old friend who forgot your name, but brought a blanket. You build it carefully, feeding it with twigs and scraps you hoarded in a corner behind the slop bucket. No one else moves yet. It's always you. Because whoever starts the fire also gets first dibs on sitting beside it. Eventually, your wife stirs. She doesn't say much, just grunts and starts preparing whatever passes for breakfast. You pretend not to notice she's using the same water you soaked your feet in last night. Waste not, freeze not. Soon the kids are up, rubbing their arms and complaining half-heartedly. You give them the spot closest to the fire, pretending your legs don't ache from the cold. The youngest sits on your lap and wriggles like a worm in a wet sock. But she's warm. That's enough. Now comes the part you dread, going out. Every morning means gathering more fuel. Firewood, brush, anything dry enough to burn. The best stuff's already picked clean, of course. You step outside, and the fog greets you like an uninvited guest who's been squatting on your doorstep all night. Your breath clouds the air. The sky is still the color of pewter, and the frost sparkles across the fields like someone spilled ground-up glass. The mud beneath your feet is frozen solid, but you know by midday it'll turn back into its usual suck-your-boot-off sludge. You walk to the edge of the village, where a half-fallen tree offers a few miserable branches. Someone's already been at it with a dull hatchet. You finish the job, but not quickly. Your hands are stiff, your fingers raw. You wrap the bundle in twine and lug it back like you're hauling treasure. Because it is treasure. Every twig is another hour of heat, another chance your kids won't cry from the cold tonight. Back home, you stash the haul in the corner beside the hearth. Your wife nods approvingly. Today won't be quite as grim. She's already boiling water, making a wheat gruel with oats so thin you can see the bottom of the pot through the mix. You sit by the fire and take stock. No new holes in the roof, no fresh rat droppings, no frostbite on anyone's ears. You've had worse mornings. And now that there's fire, it's time for fleece. Out come the sheepskins, old, worn, sometimes patchy, but still warm. They smell like wet dog and lanolin. You wrap one around your shoulders and hand another to your son. The girls share a larger pelt, giggling as they pretend it's a royal robe. You smile, and don't tell them it used to belong to a sheep named Gertrude, who was eaten 3 winters ago. That's the thing about medieval peasant life. You cling to what works. Straw underfoot to keep the dirt from turning to swamp. Layers of wool, linen, and whatever animal product didn't rot over the summer. If it holds heat, you keep it. If it doesn't, you burn it. Historians still argue whether fleece-lined clothing was common among the lower classes, or if most peasants made do with coarse wool and prayer. You're pretty sure prayer doesn't warm feet, but maybe you just don't pray hard enough. Your neighbor Emmett pops his head in. He's wrapped in a cloak so full of holes it looks like lace. He's smiling though, that weird wide-eyed grin that means someone found something rare. "I got me a fleece blanket," he says. You raise an eyebrow. "From where?" "Wife's uncle died. Nobody wanted it. Smells like goat armpit, but it's thick." You nod solemnly, as if he just inherited a castle. In some ways he has. You wish you had one more like it. Your own blanket's more patch than cloth. You share it at night, and it barely covers your knees. But it still traps warmth. Mostly. And here's a fun, if itchy, fact. Some folks use dried moss between layers of clothing as insulation. Not soft moss either. Crunchy stuff that would make you scratch in your sleep and wake up with a rash shaped like a forest. You tried it once. Never again. Back at the hearth, your wife pulls out something new. A rock. Flat, round, blackened from fire. She holds it in the coals for a while, then wraps it in a cloth and hands it to you. "Feet," she says. You tuck it under the blanket by your toes. It radiates warmth like a sleepy cat. For a moment, you think maybe today won't be so bad. Then a drip lands on your head. You look up. The thatch is sweating again. Not snow yet, just melt from last night's frost. You'll have to climb up later and shove more straw between the beams. Maybe add a layer of brambles to scare the rats off, or invite Emmett over to talk nonsense until they run away out of sheer boredom. The kids start a game with pebbles and a piece of broken pottery. Your wife sings softly while she mends a sock with thread that barely holds. Outside, the sun rises without warmth. You lean back against the wall and close your eyes. The fire crackles beside you. The rock warms your feet. And for a few minutes the world feels less cruel. You fall asleep for only a moment, or maybe longer, and wake to the unmistakable sensation of someone crawling over your legs. Not just someone, actually. Two someones. Your youngest is trying to burrow under the sheepskin like a ferret, and your son is tugging it back up, hissing that it's his turn to be warm. "Share it," you mumble, eyes still closed. "Or go wrestle the pigs for a spot." And honestly, that's not a joke. Because tonight, like most nights in late autumn, there's no such thing as personal space. You're not rich. You don't have chambers. You have one room, one fire, and one lumpy bed made of flattened straw, which everyone fights to be closest to. You get up groaning, already missing the fleeting warmth of the rock under your blanket. There are chores, sure, but the real reason you move is to avoid being used as someone's human foot warmer again. You step over your cousin who's sleeping near the door because he stopped by 3 days ago and never left. Nobody questions it. It's survival by proximity. Sharing beds isn't just common here. It's the only option. You've shared one with your siblings since you were old enough to snore. As a kid, it was fun. You made blanket forts, whispered secrets, fought over the warmest corner. But now it's a tactical arrangement. Limbs organized like puzzle pieces, backs to bellies, all in hopes of stealing a degree or two of body heat. Your wife, bless her, insists on sleeping on the outside edge, claims it's so she can get up first. You both know it's because she can't stand how much your cousin talks in his sleep, and he does. Last night he accused someone named Matilda of stealing his shoes. You haven't seen a Matilda since you were 10. As you step over the pile of humans you call family, you notice the dog. Not your dog, just the dog. Brown, scruffy, smells like damp bread. She's curled up in the warm ash of the hearth, tail over her nose, utterly ignoring you. You gave her scraps last week and she's moved in like a freeloading aunt. But she's warm. So, like the cousin, she stays. The chickens haven't come inside yet. You're holding out hope, but once it dips below freezing, they will. You'll find them roosting on the rafter beams like feathery gargoyles, dropping little gifts on your head at 2 a.m. Because here's the truth. They never show in medieval tapestries. Warmth trumps pride. So, when it's below freezing, you'll sleep beside your children, your uncle, 2 goats, and a pig named Buttercup if that's what it takes. And you do. Buttercup, for what it's worth, is surprisingly clean. For a pig. She makes little oinking snores when she sleeps, and sometimes rolls onto her back like a puppy. And she's warm. Gloriously warm. You've caught your middle child hugging her in the night. Once, someone even braided her tail. She didn't complain. The church says pigs shouldn't sleep indoors, that it's unclean and improper. But the priest sleeps alone in a stone house with 2 wool quilts and a feather-stuffed mattress so respectfully, you'll take your chances with Buttercup. Historians sometimes argue about whether peasants really kept livestock in their houses, or whether that's just a myth exaggerated by later chroniclers. But you're living proof. And it's not some charming peasant quirk. It's cold math. A pig radiates more heat than a candle. A cow, practically a fireplace with legs. You grab a blanket off the wall, one that smells like a mixture of damp earth and last spring's sheep shearing, and wrap it around yourself as you step outside. It's mid-morning now, and smoke is rising in thin lines from every thatched home. A good sign. That means the fire's stayed lit. That means your neighbors aren't waking up blue-lipped and silent. Still, you check in on them. It's custom. You poke your head into old Martha's place. She's nearly blind and mostly deaf, but sharp enough to tell you your beard looks like mold. She's alive, though, huddled in a nest of wool and muttering about soup. Further down, little Alfred is chasing his goose again. The goose always wins. You smile and keep walking. You hear coughing from half the homes. Nothing new. Winter's just begun, and the cold brings phlegm like bees to honey. It echoes through the village like a hymn, if a hymn were composed by tired lungs and stuffed noses. You gather up more straw, tuck it under your arm. You're going to need it tonight. The bed's grown flat again. Every few nights you have to fluff the straw, beat it out, and replace the bits that turned into dust or vanished mysteriously, probably down the pig's throat. Inside, your wife is sorting clothes, which is a generous term. She's picking through a pile of stitched-together rags, checking for holes big enough to swallow a child. She finds your shirt, sighs, and starts darning the armpit with a needle that's more rust than metal. Meanwhile, the kids argue over who gets to wear the thick socks. There's only one pair. Your son claims he earned them by chopping kindling. Your daughter says she sang a prayer for warmth, which should count. Your youngest licks one and declares it hers now. No one argues with her. That girl's terrifying. You can't help but smile. This is what it looks like. Peasant survival. Equal parts ingenuity, stubbornness, and pig snuggles. Later, after chores and another round of soup, still mostly onion, you all settle into your respective corners. Buttercup is inside now. She got cold, so she's in the hearth spot, flanked by 2 children, like royalty. You roll your eyes and claim the last bit of straw near the door. It's drafty, sure, but it's quiet. And as the wind howls outside and the fire crackles low, you pull your blanket tight, feel the warmth of nearby bodies, and mutter a silent prayer. Let us be warm enough to dream tonight. It starts with a drip, then another. You open your eyes slowly, unwillingly, and watch as a dark bead of water swells above your head in the thatch. Gravity wins. It lands on your forehead with the elegance of a frog sneeze. Cold, persistent, inevitable. You sigh. You shift your body to a slightly less soggy patch of straw and hope your cousin doesn't roll into your place. Again, the roof has been threatening this for weeks. What once held out the elements with dignity now sags with damp fatigue. The thatch, wheat straw layered tightly enough to make rain think twice, has been steadily losing the fight against time, gravity, and pigeons, with no regard for personal property. You drag yourself up and duck outside. The wind greets you like an insult. You glance up at the roof. It looks tired, like it needs a warm bath and a good cry. Several bundles of straw have come loose, creating inviting holes for weather and rodents alike. One corner sags where the family cat made a valiant leap and missed. You climb up with what passes for a ladder, 3 rickety rungs and a prayer. You hoist the fresh straw you stole, borrowed, from the commons, clutching it like treasure. Your fingers are numb, your nose is red, your patience is thin. As you patch the gaps, you hear the telltale skittering above your head. Rats. Again. You poke the thatch with a stick and hear them scatter like hairy marbles. That's when you hear the real party, the one happening just above your bed every night. Tiny feet dancing, muffled squeaks. A nut being cracked on your rafter beam like it's a medieval rave. No one talks about this in the old ballads. O noble knight, slayer of vermin, doesn't have the same ring. Historians often debate whether the peasant's biggest winter enemy was the cold itself, or the delightful ecosystem it invited into your roof. Truth is, it's both. You battle the elements and their tiny freeloading entourage. You finish stuffing the new straw in place, stomp your boots to scare off anything nesting in the eaves, and climb back down, trying not to fall into the slop bucket. Again, inside, the leak has slowed. Success. The kids cheer. Your cousin mumbles something about Matilda stealing his eggs. Buttercup the pig grunts softly from her hearthside cushion. You catch your wife's eye and give a triumphant shrug, like you didn't almost fall to your death over a pile of mouldy straw. Now to deal with the floor. Mud mixed with last week's ashes covers everything. The spot where you left your boots is now a small bog. You don't even own a mop. No one does. The medieval solution? More straw. Always more straw. You spread a fresh layer on the ground. It's springy. It smells slightly better than the old stuff. It also masks the sound of movement. Great for sneaking out to pee in the middle of the night. Not so great when rats use it like a racetrack. You tell yourself it's fine. You pretend not to hear the scratching under your feet. And here comes the fun part. Cooking while trying to avoid setting the house on fire. Your hearth is a shallow stone circle at the center of the room, smoke curling up into the beams, through the thatch, and out the hole in the roof, if you're lucky. If not, it bounces back and fills your lungs with the smell of someone burning an old sock. You crouch by the fire and add a few twigs. They hiss and snap, resisting your efforts like sulky teenagers. Eventually, they catch. The pot goes back on, suspended from a blackened iron hook. Tonight, it's soup again. Surprise, onion base, a carrot someone found, a few peas pretending to be generous. You stir it with the same spoon you've used for 10 years. The handle has your tooth marks from when you were 9 and too hungry to wait. You hand your wife a ladle and she does the honors. 1 scoop per bowl. The kids gather, steaming mugs in hand, eyes wide with anticipation. You all sit on logs and overturned buckets, each of you balanced like a chicken on a fence rail. The soup is hot. That's all that matters. Your nose runs. You don't wipe it. Why bother? The door creaks open. Wind blasts in. So does the neighbor's cat. It struts past you like it owns the place and curls up on a warm stone by the fire. No one questions it. If it helps chase rats, it can stay. You chew your last spoonful slowly, letting the heat linger in your chest. Then you notice it. Drip. Not again. You glance up. New leak. Same spot. Apparently your roof patch was more optimistic than effective. You stare at the droplets swelling above you. You could move. You could grab another armful of straw. You could even curse in 4 languages if you had the energy. But instead, you just exhale, shake your head and mutter, maybe it'll freeze before it falls. And sometimes it actually does. That night, you drift off again to the sound of wind weaving through the thatch, the soft creak of beams, and a single, quiet plink of water finding its mark on the floorboards. You wrap your blanket tighter, nudge your cousin's elbow off your ribs, and accept what you already know deep down. The cold is clever, but so are you, and the battle continues tomorrow. Sometime after midnight, the urge arrives. Relentless, non-negotiable. You try to ignore it. You try shifting position, clutching your belly, even reciting prayers to saints who probably have better things to do. But your body insists. You need to relieve yourself. Now, you peel yourself away from the warmth of the shared bedding like a snail leaving its shell. Your joints complain. Your wife groans and throws the blanket over her head. One of the kids mutters something about geese. The pig snorts once and doesn't move. You shuffle across the room in your bare feet, instantly regret it. The floor is damp, frigid, and full of mystery. Is that straw or something less poetic? You don't ask. You step lightly and aim for the shadow in the corner. The chamber pot. Every house has one. A precious ceramic pot or wooden bucket, depending on how lucky or unlucky you are. Yours is somewhere in between, clay, cracked on one side, painted long ago with what was probably a flower. It now looks like a melted cabbage. You squat, squint, and try to go quickly without waking up your bladder's full sibling, which would require a trip outside. That's the ultimate punishment. You'd rather wrestle a wolf than step into the night with your breeches around your ankles. Still, even the indoor solution comes with risks. The pot is icy cold. You do what must be done. Then, holding your breath, you carefully place the lid back on. No one wants to spill that again. You remember last year's tragedy. Your eldest knocked it over while half asleep. You didn't speak to him for a week. He still apologizes every time he sees a jug. You tiptoe back to the bedding and wedge yourself into your former groove, which has somehow vanished. Now it's lumpy and cold, and your cousin has stretched out like he owns the place. You consider kicking him. Instead, you settle for stealing back a corner of the blanket. As you close your eyes, your feet still tingling, you whisper to no one in particular. Why can't bladders wait for sunrise? Because in winter, the worst part of the night isn't the cold, it's the interruptions. Eventually, you drift back into uneasy sleep, and then the rooster crows, not yours, your neighbor's. The one with a voice like a cracked bell and a personal vendetta against sleep. You groan and sit up. No point fighting it. The sky is still dark, but the day has already decided it's happening. You stir the fire back to life. The embers sulk for a while before surrendering. You toss on some wood and wait for the crackle to return. Today is laundry day. You wish it weren't. Laundry in winter is less about cleanliness and more about gambling with frostbite. Still, you gather the family's rags, shirts stiff with sweat, hose that could stand on their own, underclothes you'd rather not look directly at, and haul them outside. The stream is nearby, it's also near freezing. You kneel on the icy bank, smash the ice with a stick, and dip your hands into the water. It feels like plunging into a bucket of angry bees. Your fingers go numb within seconds. You scrub the clothes on a flat stone, wring them out, and drape them over a nearby bush. They'll freeze solid within minutes. It's fine. That's just how laundry works this time of year. Wash, freeze, beat, repeat. There's a joke in the village that frozen shirts make great armor. Once, someone wore one to a tavern fight and walked away without a bruise. True story. Maybe. You drag the frozen laundry back home and hang it by the fire to thaw, hoping it won't drip too much into the soup pot. Again. The house smells like wet wool, wood smoke, and onion skins. You don't notice it anymore. Breakfast is the same as always. Porridge. Barely warm. Slightly lumpy. A treasure if you're lucky enough to get the crusty bit at the bottom. As you eat, your daughter points to the window. Frost. Beautiful, delicate spirals blooming on the glass like secret paintings. You all stop and stare, just for a moment. Even the pig looks. Then someone sneezes, and the moment's gone. You all scatter to chores, mending tools, fetching water, gathering kindling. Your cousin goes to town for flour. The dog follows him. You hope they both come back. Later, you huddle again by the hearth, letting your clothes steam gently. The children wrap themselves in rags like little ghosts. Your wife hums a tune she learned from her grandmother. No one remembers the words. You hear a thud from outside, probably snow falling from the roof, or a chicken fainting from cold. Either way, not your problem tonight. You lean back, close your eyes, and feel the chamber pot mocking you from the corner. You'll need it again, eventually, but not just yet. The fire is crackling, though weakly, like it's lost the will to be impressive. You sit close, rubbing your hands together, letting the heat soak in like it might reach your bones if you concentrate hard enough. Around you, your family does the same, each person angled toward the flames with the reverence usually reserved for saints or cheese. The hearth is everything now, the center of the home, the center of your sanity. Without it, you wouldn't last a night. That's not dramatic, just simple math. No fire means no warmth. No warmth means stiff limbs, blue fingers, and sleep that you might not wake up from. You poke the embers with a stick. The fire hisses like it's annoyed at being asked to keep doing its job. The logs are few. You burned the last of the seasoned wood last week. Now it's green branches and damp bark that spit and sulk and offer heat the way a miser lends coins, grudgingly. Still, this little flame is your fortress. You feed it carefully, rationing kindling like bread during famine. Each stick is precious. You remember the times when fires roared in noble halls, fed by whole trees for the sake of comfort. Meanwhile, you're over here treating twigs like heirlooms. One of the kids brings over a fresh armload of brush, mostly weeds and splintery pine cones. You nod with the solemnity of a captain receiving new supplies. It'll burn. Badly, but it'll burn. Your wife uses the fire to warm a cloth. One of the children's feet is turning an alarming shade of pale, and she gently wraps it with the hot fabric, muttering under her breath. Not curses, not exactly, just the sort of language people invent when life's uncomfortable and uncooperative. You adjust the rocks around the hearth. They hold heat longer than the fire itself. At night, you nestle them under blankets like sleepy dragons. It's a trick you learned from your grandfather, who survived 2 winters on rocks and sheer defiance. There's soot on everything now. The ceiling beams are streaked black. The walls wear a dusty coat like a smoky fog settled indoors. Even your teeth feel stained. You wipe your hand across your cheek and leave behind a smear that makes you look like you've been wrestling coal. Historians love to romanticize hearth life. The glowing fire, the family huddled round sharing stories. Sure, but they leave out the choking smoke, the permanent eye-watering sting, and the fact that half your hair now smells like burnt turnip. You glance up at the roof. No chimney, of course, just a hole cut into the thatch. And that hole, it's a gamble. Sometimes it lets the smoke out. Sometimes it invites the rain in. Sometimes it does both. That's always a party. There's an open question among scholars about how peasants avoided smoke inhalation back then. Some say it was drafty homes and high tolerance. Others insist people just coughed a lot and dealt with it. Judging by your current hacking fit, you're leaning toward the latter. Still, there's something almost sacred about it, isn't there? This ritual of tending flame. It gives you purpose, rhythm, focus. You learn to read its moods. The bright pop of dry wood, the sullen sputter of damp moss, the slow hiss of a log giving up its ghosts. Sometimes you just sit and stare at it, letting your eyes unfocus until the flames become dancers in a world you only visit half asleep. Tonight, someone suggests a story. Your eldest pipes up, clearing his throat with dramatic flair. He starts telling the tale of the man who tried to marry a frost spirit. Classic winter fare. Apparently, she kissed him and turned him into an icicle. You've heard it a dozen times. Still, you listen. The fire flickers in time with his words. Shadows play across your children's faces. Your wife smiles faintly, kneading a bit of dough even though there's no yeast and very little hope. The pig snores loudly. The moment is cozy in that rough medieval way. For now, you're warm. For now, the fire holds. When the story ends, there's silence. Not awkward, just full. Full of smoke, closeness, the kind of quiet that makes you forget your nose is running and your back hurts. You add one last stick to the fire, just one. You have to save the rest. The room dims. The flames settle into embers, glowing like sleeping eyes. You pull the children closer, wrapping them in every blanket, cloak, and goatskin you own. Your cousin mumbles something about Matilda again. You ignore him. You wrap a warm stone in cloth and tuck it at your feet. Not perfect, but it keeps the frostbite away. As you lie back down, the fire crackling low, you find yourself whispering a small thank you. Not to the saints, not even to the fire, but to whoever figured out that a few twigs and some dry grass could push back the cold, even just a little. You wake coughing, not politely, not the dainty kind you'd hear in a lady's parlor. No, this is a full-chested, eye-watering, lung-rattling symphony. One of the kids joins in, then another. Soon, it sounds like a choir of geese with bronchitis. You sit up slowly, blinking through the haze. The fire's gone to sleep. What's left are embers dim as a dying star, and a house filled with smoke that didn't bother to leave through the roof hole. You crack the door. Fresh air slices in like a blade, cold and sharp, but it helps. The smoke begins to drift out in long, reluctant ribbons. You all sit there, huddled in blankets, eyes red, throats raw, blinking like owls who regret everything. It's just another morning. See, sleeping with fire is a delicate art. You want warmth? Yes. But if you close up the house too tight to keep the heat in, the smoke stays too. And it stays like a jealous ex, lingering, stubborn, occasionally toxic. There are no chimneys here. Those are for castles, monasteries, and homes that get cleaned more than twice a year. You've got a smoke hole, basically a guess someone made with a knife and a good intention. Some villagers raise their beds closer to the roof rafters, believing heat rises. It does. But so does smoke. So you get to choose, warm and wheezy, or cold and clear-headed. Most people just mix the two and call it a night. You throw open a window, not really a window, more of a wooden flap pretending to be one. It groans and resists. It hasn't been opened in weeks, possibly months. It creaks open just enough to let out some smoke and let in a draft that bites your cheeks like a playful wolf. Outside, the world is silver. Frost clings to everything like it's auditioning for a poem. The trees are statues. The fields look deceptively soft, like you could bounce on them. You tried once. You limped for days. You shake out a blanket by the door. The pig snorts indignantly as the cold rushes in, and your wife gives you that look, half amused, half murderous. You offer a sheepish shrug and quickly close the flap again. With the smoke cleared, you breathe easier, but the coughing doesn't stop. Not really. Your eldest is wheezing. Not badly, not dangerously. But it's there. That little catch in the breath that says winter's winning. And that's where she comes in. The wise woman. No one's sure how old she is. 60? 100? She smells like dried mushrooms and something unidentifiably herbal. Her teeth are crooked, and her cat might be a goblin in disguise. But she knows things. Remedies. Poultices. Words to say over a boil that make it go away, or at least think about it. You send your cousin to fetch her. He's the healthiest, and honestly, he needs the exercise. While you wait, your wife boils water. Just water, but the steam alone feels like medicine. You all crowd near it like it's a miracle. One of the kids accidentally dips their blanket corner in. It sizzles. Nobody cries. We've all done it. The wise woman arrives mid-morning, wrapped in 3 shawls and muttering about your doorstep being uneven. She plops her basket down, reaches in, and begins pulling out a collection of items that make the children stare in fascinated horror. There's a dried frog, a bundle of twigs, a cloth bag that rattles. She doesn't say hello. She just points at your son and says, "Cough." He does. She nods, pulls out a leather pouch, and spoons something into a cup of hot water. It smells like licorice and sadness. Your son drinks it, gags once, then blinks in surprise. You lean closer. "What's in that?" She grins. "Ground root, some moss, and a beetle I dried in the sun last summer." You decide you didn't want to know. She tosses herbs into the fire, releasing a pungent smoke that smells like burnt peppermint and horse blanket. The kids complain, but the room feels warmer somehow. You don't question it. Historians still argue whether these women, herbalists, wise women, midwives, were true healers or just skilled at theatre and timing. You figure it doesn't matter. If your kid stops coughing, she could dance naked with a turnip on her head, and you'd still pay her in bread. She leaves with a half loaf and a promise to return in 2 days. You watch her go, a bundle of scarves and secrets disappearing into the snow. Later, your wife rubs a garlic clove on the doorframe. "Just in case," she says. "Of what?" She shrugs. "Spirits, the cold, bad luck, I don't know." You nod, because she's probably right. Garlic's cheaper than saints anyway. As night falls, the air feels thick again, but not with smoke. Just cold, still, like the world is holding its breath. You gather the family around the hearth, coax the fire to life once more. The children snuggle under shared blankets. Your cousin falls asleep mid-sentence. The pig curls up with a deep, satisfied grunt. You stare into the flames, eyes half closed, grateful for one more quiet night, one more ember refusing to die out. Above you, in the rafters, something scurries. A rat, maybe. Or the wise woman's cat, checking in. Either way, you smile. You're still here. You haven't changed your shirt in, well, you've lost count. Days, weeks, possibly since the last full moon. It clings to your body like a second, coarser skin. When you peel it off, which is rare and usually involves groaning and swearing softly, it keeps its shape for a few moments, like a tired ghost, unsure whether to sit or collapse. Clothing, you've learned, is less about fashion and more about survival. And in winter, it's about layering whatever fabric-like material you can find until you resemble a hay bale with limbs. Today, you add a second tunic. It smells like sheep and damp cellar, but it's warmer than your usual. You tuck the hems into your hose, woolen tubes stretched thin by years of wear, and possibly a squirrel chewing one leg. The children, meanwhile, are in their own medieval version of winter chic. Wool overdresses, patched cloaks, and bits of fur stitched haphazardly onto anything that stays still long enough. One of them has wrapped a rag around her head like a crown. She declares herself queen of coldness. You don't argue. You sit by the fire, brushing your leggings with a rock to get rid of some of the clinging dirt. It doesn't help. The dirt is part of you now. Historians like to say medieval peasants slept in their clothes, but really, you lived in them. There was no changing into pajamas, no linen drawers for lounging. You wore what you had until it fell apart or became unrecognizable. Or worse, a family heirloom passed down with pride and a slightly alarming odor. There's a running joke in your house. If you've worn it long enough, it starts to insulate out of sheer familiarity. One of the kids swears her cloak now knows her shape. You believe it. It folds perfectly around her every time. Outside, it's snowing. Not the beautiful, poetic flakes that make bards swoon. No, these are sideways, aggressive flakes. Wind-driven shards that slap your cheeks like frosty insults. You open the door to toss out the slop bucket and immediately reconsider all your life choices. Still, you must venture out. You need water. You wrap your cloak tight, add a scarf made from what was once a bedsheet, and prepare for the trek to the communal well. It's not far, just past the blacksmith's shed and the place where that one cart has been stuck in the mud since September. The snow crunches under your feet. Not soft crunch, angry crunch. The kind that means your boots are leaking, even if they technically don't have holes. Just ventilation. You pass a neighbor beating his coat against a tree. It releases a cloud of dust and what might be a spider. He waves. His nose is bright red, but he looks proud. "Fewer fleas this year," he says cheerfully. You nod like that's good news. And it is. Back home, you dump the water into the barrel by the hearth and place the bucket upside down near the fire so it doesn't freeze solid overnight. Again, you glance at your wife. She's sewing a patch into the back of your tunic. The patch is made from an old potato sack. It has the faint imprint of a merchant's name on it, but it's warm and it's free. There's something quietly heroic about this patchwork wardrobe. Everything you wear has a story. A scrap from your uncle's funeral cloak, a sleeve borrowed from a cousin's wedding garb, a bit of curtain that once hung in the village chapel, probably. You don't ask questions anymore. There's no laundry schedule, just a rhythm. When your clothes itch too much or begin to stand on their own, you brave the cold, wash them in the icy stream, and wear them wet until they dry, which, in winter, takes approximately 3 weeks. One time you tried drying socks by the fire. They caught fire. You still have the scar on your foot, and a healthy respect for wool's unpredictable relationship with flames. You remember stories of nobles with closets full of silks and linens, perfumed gloves, velvet doublets, a shirt for every day of the week. You laugh softly. A shirt per day? Luxury. You have 2 shirts, one on your body, one dreaming of the next wash day. And yet you manage. The fire is burning low. The wind outside howls like it's been wronged personally. The dog is curled up in your sock pile, which is fair. He probably mistook it for his mother. You pull the patched cloak tighter, wriggle into the same straw bed you've flattened every night for the past 10 years, and tuck your icy toes under the warmest child. She grumbles, but lets you stay. Tomorrow you'll wake in the same shirt with the same smells, the same holes, and the same stubborn heartbeat reminding you you're still here, and somehow still warm enough to laugh. Your stomach growls before your eyes even open. It's the kind of growl that sounds like a warning, a protest from deep within. It's not painful, exactly, just persistent. like a dog nudging your leg because it knows there's meat somewhere, even if you don't. You stretch under the blanket, which smells like damp wool and a hint of pig. Your son shifts beside you, still sleeping, his mouth slightly open. You briefly envy him. Sleeping through hunger is a skill you haven't mastered. You sit up slowly. The fire has burned down to a few dull embers. You shuffle to the hearth and poke them, adding a few scraps of wood until they cough back to life. The warmth licks at your face in a half-hearted greeting. You check the pot, still something inside. A thick layer of congealed porridge clings to the sides like it's too stubborn to leave. You scrape at it with a wooden spoon. It peels away in curls, and you tell yourself it's enough. Porridge, again. You ladle some into a bowl and pass it to your wife, then your children. Everyone gets a scoop. It's thin, made from barley, oats, whatever grains you've managed to save. Once, long ago, there was honey, sometimes milk. Now it's water, salt, and hope. You eat your portion slowly. It's warm. That's what matters. Warm food is like a handshake from life itself. Cold food in winter is an insult, a reminder. So you're grateful for the steam rising from the bowl, even if it smells like a damp bookshelf. One of the kids pokes around their bowl and asks, "Is this meat?" Your wife squints. "No, that's a pebble." Everyone shrugs and keeps eating. There hasn't been meat in the house for weeks. Your last chicken became soup 2 Sundays ago. The pig, Buttercup, remains off limits, at least until you're truly desperate. And even then, you'd argue she's become more family than food. You used to trap rabbits, but the traps have been coming up empty lately. They've either grown wise or vanished. One of your neighbors swears he saw a fox dragging something off last week. You're not sure if you believe him, but you're jealous either way. Hunger in winter isn't dramatic. It's slow. It creeps. At first you notice your belt getting looser. Then you notice how cold you feel even when the fire's hot. Then comes the part where your dreams start tasting better than anything you've eaten. Last night you dreamed of a feast. A huge table filled with roasted meats, fresh bread, apples piled high. You woke up chewing your blanket. Your wife chuckles when you tell her. "I dreamt of stew," she says, "with onions." You hate onions. Exactly. That's how I know I'm starving. You both laugh. It feels good, like chewing on joy, brief, but enough. Historians often point out how the medieval peasant diet was surprisingly nutritious. Lots of grains, legumes, even vegetables. That may be true in theory, but winter's theory is cruel. Fields are bare. The ground is too hard to dig. What's stored is all you have, and what's left is often moldy, buggy, or missing altogether. You check the storage bin under the floorboards. A few turnips, some dried beans, a suspicious potato that looks like it has opinions, not much else. Your cousin returns from the mill with a small sack of flour. His cheeks are red, his nose is dripping, and his expression says he had to do some serious bargaining. Probably gave away his extra boots again. You hope he didn't trade his hat. You'll use the flour carefully. A flatbread tonight, maybe. No leavening, no seasoning, but it'll fill the stomach and trick the body into feeling full. Your daughter presents a treasure. A shriveled apple, half frozen, found under a blanket in the corner. She cradles it like it's a newborn. Everyone takes a tiny bite. It tastes like memory. It's gone in seconds. Around midday, you drink some weak ale. It's safer than water and takes the edge off hunger. Barely, but enough to blur the ache into something manageable. The children are giddy for a few minutes, giggling and spinning in circles before collapsing into a pile of wool and laughter. You smile at the sound. Hunger hasn't taken that yet. There's a rumor in the village. Someone saw a deer in the forest. A real one. Fat, brown, antlers like twisted branches. Nobody's caught it yet, but it's out there, hope on hooves. You think about joining the next hunting party. Maybe tomorrow. If your boots thaw. If the snow isn't too deep. If your legs remember how to run. Tonight, it's porridge again. Scraped from the sides of the same pot. The same way, with the same spoon. And yet, when you pass it around, everyone says thank you. Even the pig grunts in approval. You sit by the fire. Your stomach not quite full, but no longer growling. The children settle under their cloaks, your cousin already snoring. Your wife leans against you. Her hands are cold, but her smile is warm. You're not satisfied, but you're not starving. And in winter, that's a feast. You're not exactly surprised when old Walter doesn't come to breakfast. He's been coughing harder each night, wheezing through every prayer. And last week, he gave his boots to a boy who lost his in the mud. Said he wouldn't be needing them much longer. Still, the news travels with a hush. Not grief exactly, something quieter. Acceptance maybe, or tiredness. Walter was 70, or so he claimed. Could have been 50. Hard to say when winter ages people twice as fast. You visit his cottage with your cousin, boots crunching in the snow. His doors open a crack. Inside, everything's still. A blanket pulled high, a pot cold on the hearth. His body curled in the straw like he just decided not to get up today. No struggle, just silence. You close the door gently and leave the candle burning. Back home, your wife is already preparing a cloth to wrap him in. Burial isn't today. Ground's frozen solid. Digging would take hours and multiple backs. There's a spot near the church, waiting for warmer days. Until then, Walter will rest inside, wrapped tight, laid near the fire of his niece's home. Death in winter is inconvenient. That's the hard truth. You mourn, but quickly. The fire needs tending. The animals need feeding. You can't afford to pause for sadness when frost creeps over your breath and snatches heat from your skin the moment you stop moving. There's a belief, superstition, really, that the dead protect the living in winter. That if you treat them kindly, they'll warm your walls from the other side. Your wife sprinkles herbs around the corners, mutters something in a language you don't speak. You nod. No harm in covering your bases. At night, someone tells a story about Walter's younger days. How he chased a runaway pig through the village square, wearing nothing but a potato sack and one boot. The children giggle. The adults smile. Even Buttercup seems to snort approvingly. You light an extra candle in the window. A signal, maybe. A comfort. Or just a reminder that even when one flame goes out, another stays lit. The next morning, the fire's low again. You poke it gently, as if waking a child. The wood's nearly gone. You'll need more soon. The burial won't happen for days, but Walter's niece sets a bowl of porridge near his wrapped body each night anyway. The dog keeps sniffing at it. No one lets him eat it. Your youngest asks the question everyone dreads. Will we die too? You pause. Not long, just enough. Not today, you say. That's the closest thing to truth you can offer. Historians still debate how medieval peasants processed death, whether it haunted them or simply folded into the rhythm of life. From where you sit, it's both. There's sorrow, yes, but there's also soup to stir, logs to split, boots to mend. Walter's spot by the fire is empty now. The kids take turns sitting in it like it's a throne. Your cousin claims he saw a mouse bow in that direction. You let him believe it. Life moves. You catch yourself humming one of Walter's songs while fetching water. You hum it again while brushing ash off your tunic. And when you sit by the fire, blanket over your shoulders, you hum it softly into the rising smoke. Later, the dog howls once in his sleep. You pretend it's nothing, but your wife lights another candle anyway, just in case. There's a noise at the door, more of a bump than a knock. You glance up from your work, straw in hand, halfway through patching a hole in the bedding. Another bump, then a low grunt. You open the door, and there she is. Buttercup. Again, she saunters in like she owns the place. Hooves muddy, snout cold, and tail flicking with judgment. She pauses, sniffs the corner where the turnips used to be, and then plops herself down by the hearth with a sigh so deep it might have come from a bishop. You don't even argue anymore. In the old days, by which you mean last year, you used to keep your pigs in the pen behind the house. Logical, sanitary. But those days ended the first time Frost turned the trough into a pig-sized ice rink. Buttercup had squealed so loudly, the neighbor thought your wife had gone into labor. So now, like many of your fellow villagers, your livestock shares your living space during the coldest months. The church frowns on it, of course, but the priest has a fire, a feather bed, and no children. You, meanwhile, have 5 dependents, a smoke hole, and a pig with strong opinions. Buttercup isn't the only one. Your cousin recently brought his goat inside, claims it's just temporary. The goat has since learned how to open the latch and eats buttons directly off clothing, and it sleeps on his side of the bed. Still, these animals give more than they take. Buttercup's body is like a furnace. When she's pressed up against the wall, it radiates heat so generously that the children have started calling her the hot rock. You don't correct them. She also eats scraps, alerts you to intruders, and once scared off a fox by snorting with such aggression it tripped over its own feet. You'd swear she grinned after. Historians sometimes marvel at how medieval peasants integrated livestock into the domestic sphere, which is a very elegant way of saying you lived with a pig because freezing to death was slightly worse than the smell. And yes, there's a smell, a musky blend of mud, hay, wet wool, and something you refuse to identify. It clings to everything. You smell it in your clothes, your blankets, your hair. Your daughter says her doll now smells like the barn. You nod solemnly and tell her that means the doll is brave. The good news, after a while your nose just gives up, stops noticing, or maybe it freezes too. You catch Buttercup eyeing the porridge pot. She knows better than to help herself, but you throw her a crust anyway. She chomps loudly, sending flecks of oats onto your cousin's boots. Gracious, your cousin mutters, wiping his toe. She eats like she's paying rent. You smirk. She's warmer than you. I'd charge you rent first. He huffs and goes back to mending the net he's convinced will catch fish through ice. You let him have the dream. Later, you set out to clean the corner where Buttercup sleeps. It's a chore you've grown used to. Part stable hand, part roommate. You shovel the soiled straw, add fresh, and make a mental note to ask the miller for more. Buttercup watches you with what can only be described as polite condescension. Still, there's something comforting about her presence. Her soft grunts at night, the warmth she gives, even her insistence on claiming the warmest part of the hearth like a spoiled aunt. There's a moment, quiet and unexpected, when she rests her head on your knee while you sit near the fire. You stroke her coarse hair absently, eyes half closed, and feel her warmth soak into your leg. It's absurd. It's slightly unsanitary. It's also the coziest you felt all week. The children fall asleep around her, leaning against her sides like furry pillows. Your wife places a blanket over them without a word. Your cousin mumbles something about Matilda stealing his pig and rolls over. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, howling like it wants in. But inside, you've got warmth, soup, a snoring pig, and a family tucked close. Historians might raise their eyebrows, but Buttercup's here, and that's enough. You're ankle deep in frozen mud, again. The ground should be solid this time of year, but the weather's turned cruel in its indecision. Last night froze everything stiff as stone. This morning, the sun came out just long enough to thaw the surface into a deceptive mess. And now it's like trudging through porridge made by someone angry at porridge. You glance down at your boots, leather, cracked, patched with twine and prayer. They squelch with every step. One might be filling with water. You don't check. You'd rather not know. Chores can't wait just because the earth turned to soup. The animals still need feeding. The firewood still needs fetching. And someone has to collect the eggs, assuming the hens haven't gone on strike again. Your wife is in the doorway, sleeves rolled, shouting over the wind. Don't forget the bundle behind the smithy, and watch for the ditch. The ditch. The ditch. Everyone has that one ditch in the village. The one that waits, hungry, pretending to be shallow. Yours swallowed a chicken once. The kids swore they saw it reappear 2 days later, muddy but alive, with a haunted look in its eyes. You skirt it carefully, stick in hand like a blind man feeling for the edge of the world. Success. Just mud this time. Only slightly humiliating. You round the smithy, grab the firewood left for you by the blacksmith's apprentice, likely in exchange for your cousin's goat cheese, which tastes like regret, but burns well if you hold it close to a candle. The bundle's wet, of course. Everything's wet. You tie it with a cord and haul it over your back, spine groaning in protest. On your way home, you spot your neighbor, Edith, trying to dig a rut for draining water away from her pig pen. She's wielding a broken shovel and shouting something about demons hiding in the muck. You wave. She waves back. Her skirt is soaked up to her knees. Nice weather, you call. I'll marry the next man with dry socks, she replies. You'd volunteer. but you haven't had dry socks since Michaelmas. Back at home, the kids are cleaning the straw bedding, which is to say, they're moving clumps of it from one side of the room to the other while pretending to fight over who found the least moldy patch. You drop the firewood beside the hearth with a satisfying thunk. Buttercup grunts her approval from her usual spot and snuffles through the pile for anything vaguely edible. She finds nothing. You are, mercifully, spared a muddy snout to the shin. You lay the logs beside the fire, peel off your outer cloak, which could now stand on its own, and hang it near the embers. It drips steadily. Your wife hands you a cup of something hot, thin beer, maybe broth, possibly both. You drink it gratefully, trying not to focus on the floating bit of something unidentifiable. The room smells like wet wool, scorched ash, and old onions. You take a deep breath. It's home. The rest of the day is more of the same. Mud, more chores, and a running tally of who has fallen down, most often this week. Currently, your cousin leads. By a lot. He claims it's a tactical choice to avoid sudden injuries. You think he's just clumsy. Historians still wrestle with how medieval peasants handled daily winter labor in such conditions. Some argue it built resilience. Others think it shortened lifespans. You think it did both, built strong legs and weak knees. As evening falls, the mud begins to freeze again. You can hear it underfoot, stiffening with that strange, quiet crackle, like bread crust forming on the earth. You walk carefully, knowing full well that one wrong step means an ankle turned or a hip bruised, and you can't afford to be injured. No one can. At dinner, the soup tastes faintly of beetroot and something else you're too polite to name. Everyone eats quietly, too tired for talk. Buttercup sleeps so deeply she snores in rhythm with the fire's pops. You settle in for the night, with your feet wrapped in dry cloth, thankful for the firewood, for the children's laughter echoing faintly from their corner, for the roof holding firm despite the slop sliding off its edges. And as you lie back, staring at the beams above, you mutter, "Just once, I'd like to step outside and not sink. Maybe next week, but probably not." The wind tonight is crueler than usual. It doesn't howl, it whistles. A thin, needling sound that slips through every gap, seam, and crack in your home. You swear it's personal. Like it found your name etched on a list of people it really wants to annoy. You sit on the floor, back against the wall, stuffing hay into a hole near the baseboard. The wind's been poking through it all day, and now your wife insists she feels a breeze on her knees, which means it's your problem now. You jam the hay tighter, then step back, squint at it, and slap a bit of mud over the spot to hold it. That's the trick. Hay first, then clay. Otherwise, the wind laughs and blows it back into your porridge mid-meal. Hay is your main insulator. You use it for bedding, for plugging walls, even for wrapping your feet when your socks give up. There's not a corner of this house that doesn't smell faintly of overworked grass. And when it's dry, it works wonders. When it's not, however, well, you shuffle over to the sleeping mat and lift the edge of the straw mattress to check. Sure enough, damp again. Probably from condensation, possibly from the dog. Maybe from that night someone spilled ale and insisted it would dry by morning. It never did. You pull out the worst of the straw, clumps that are turning dark and starting to grow questionable fuzz, and toss them into the corner. Then you lay in fresh handfuls, fluffing them into something almost inviting. Your youngest appears, holding a rat by the tail. "Found him in the hay wall," she announces proudly. You stare, the rat wiggles. She's beaming. You take it outside and release it near the ditch, muttering blessings and curses in equal measure. Back inside, your cousin is sitting near the fire, pulling twigs from his sock. "Something's been nesting in my boot again," he mutters. You nod. "That happened to you last week. A family of mice had moved into the toe and were halfway through converting it into a 2-room lodge. You had to chase them out with a stick and an apology. It's no mystery why the critters come inside. It's warm. It's full of hay, and you don't exactly have guards posted. A determined mouse with a cold nose can become a resident faster than you can say, 'Don't chew that.'" Historians sometimes argue whether medieval peasant homes were truly overrun with rodents, or if that's just exaggeration from noble scribes. To you, the answer is simple. Build a house out of sticks and straw, add food scraps and firelight, and see who shows up. Your wife starts placing dried herbs along the floor edges. Lavender, mint, marjoram. She says it keeps the mice out. You suspect it just makes their nests smell nicer. Still, the house has a pleasant fragrance for the first time in weeks. You gather more hay for the wall by the doorframe, which now whistles every time someone breathes near it. The wood has shrunk from age and moisture, leaving a gap wide enough for gossip to pass through. You stuff it like a turkey, mud it like a sculptor, and press it tight. The whistling fades. Victory. Then a fresh gust sneaks in through the roof. You sigh, look up, of course. Back onto the ladder you go. The thatch is cold, brittle, and lightly dusted with snow. You wedge your hands between the reeds, tucking in fresh straw where the rats, or time, have pulled it loose. You find one mouse nest. It's warm, kind of sweet, actually. The mice are gone. You take their bedding and repurpose it. Waste not. Back inside, you hang your cloak near the fire to dry. It steams slightly. Your daughter is singing to the pig. The pig seems unamused. You collapse onto the mattress with a groan, which is now notably fluffier, drier, and, thanks to your wife's herb stash, smells faintly of lavender and cow. Not bad. Outside, the wind is still trying to get in, but you've given it fewer options, for now. You roll over, tuck your knees in, and whisper, "If the hay holds, we might sleep." And you do, mostly, until someone sneezes hay into your ear at 2 a.m. It's late afternoon when your neighbor drops by with a gift, a jug of something murky and suspicious that sloshes with too much confidence. You know that look. It's brew. Barley ale, he grins. Maybe, could be beet water, might be both. You don't ask questions. You pour 2 cups, hand him one, and clink the rims together like it's a knight's banquet, and not a pair of wooden mugs by a soot-covered hearth. The first sip bites your tongue. The second burns your throat. The third feels like someone lit a small fire in your chest. And somehow, that's the point. By the fourth, you don't mind the wind rattling the shutters anymore. Truth is, drinking helps. Not for the joy, exactly, but for the warmth. And the forgetting. Just a little. It dulls the aches in your back, the hunger gnawing at your sides, the creak of frozen boots, and the groan of too damp straw. It makes the cold fuzzier. Not gone, but fuzzy. Your wife eyes you from the corner. She's not against a drink, but she's seen you try to hug a ladder before. She reminds you, with one arched brow, not to get clever with the brew. You nod solemnly and take a 5th sip. Drinking isn't a daily thing. You can't afford it. But when someone brews a batch, it becomes a village event, traded like currency, guarded like firewood. No one measures the ingredients. They go by instinct, curses, and moon phase. The results vary wildly. One time, the blacksmith's cousin made something that peeled paint off the chapel door. Another time, it cured your cousin's cough so thoroughly that he forgot he'd ever had lungs. You pass the jug around the room. Everyone takes a turn. Your wife, your cousin, twice. Even your eldest, who grimaces like he bit a nettle and asks for a second just to prove something. The kids don't drink, of course, but they watch the adults with wide eyes and giggles, like they're witnessing a secret ritual passed down through ale-stained generations. Your neighbor tells a story about the time he wrestled a goose for a loaf of bread during the frost of '92. You interrupt to point out it was a duck. He insists it was a goose with identity issues. The debate spirals into laughter. Soon, the room is full of warmth that has nothing to do with fire. Laughter, rosy cheeks, eyes that sparkle despite the soot and the sleeplessness. The pig grunts as if demanding her turn. You consider it. She declines with a snort. Historians often view medieval peasant drinking as a social anchor. They're not wrong. Ale is more than a beverage. It's a blanket, a gathering point, a reason to sit a little closer and forget, just for a while, that your ceiling leaks and your socks are older than your children. There's an old saying, weak ale, strong bonds. You think it's supposed to be metaphorical, but tonight it feels literal. You take your last sip slowly. Let it sit on your tongue. Let it warm the back of your throat like a memory you want to stretch out. Then comes the part you don't enjoy. Standing up. Your knees crack. Your back complains. Your cousin mutters something about Matilda who, according to him, once made a brew so strong it made a rooster sing psalms. No one believes him, but everyone wants the recipe. The jug is nearly empty. Your neighbor wraps it in cloth and tucks it under his arm. You see him out, both of you swaying slightly, not from the drink, you insist, but from the cold. Back inside, your wife is already piling the children into blankets. The room smells like smoke, wool, and something faintly sweet from the brew. You crawl into bed. The pig has stolen your usual spot. You argue, she grunts. You compromise. As the fire dies down to a soft glow, you feel the ale hum through your veins. Not dizzy, just relaxed. You close your eyes and listen to the night. The wind is still there, poking at the walls. But tonight it sounds less threatening, almost like it's drunk too. You smile, whisper into the dark. Next time we add cinnamon, and then you sleep. Romance in winter is mostly logistics. You're cold, she's cold. You both pretend to shift positions for comfort when really you're trying to align knees and elbows into the most efficient configuration for heat retention. There's nothing particularly poetic about two people wrapped in scratchy wool and stale hay, huddled together like spoons made of burlap. And yet, there's something in it. A glance, a whisper shared between frostbitten lips, a laugh, low and slow, when your toes find hers under the blanket and she pretends to protest. Tonight, the children have fallen asleep early, huddled in a tangle of cloaks and fur. Buttercup snores at the hearth. Your cousin mumbles something deeply disturbing about a sausage and a bishop. You ignore it. You and your wife sit side by side, sharing the last bit of warmth from a flat stone that spent the afternoon buried in coals. It radiates gently through the cloth, through your legs, all the way to the core of you. Outside, snow falls soft and steady, thickening the world with silence. She's darning socks, her fingers nimble despite the cold. You pretend to be fixing a buckle on your belt, but mostly you're watching her. Her hair is tied up today, but strands have fallen loose. There's a smudge of soot on her cheek and a bit of straw in her sleeve. She hasn't changed her tunic in 3 days. She smells like broth, ash, and rosemary. You think she's never looked lovelier. Your feet are in my space, she murmurs without looking up. They're seeking companionship, you reply. They're seeking a bath, she says. You both smile. Romance is subtle here. No candlelit dinners. No long walks under moonlight. You'd freeze before reaching the neighbor's fence. But you've learned to find tenderness in the smallest things. The way she hands you the first bowl of soup. The way she pulls the blanket up around your shoulders without saying anything. The way her eyes linger a second longer when you laugh, as if catching a glimpse of the boy you used to be. Historians sometimes wonder whether peasants had time for affection, let alone love. Too tired, they say. Too hungry, too busy surviving. But they forget the long winter nights, the hours spent side by side, doing nothing but listening to the wind and the crackle of fire. You fall in love slowly here, not in grand gestures, but in repeated kindnesses, in surviving together. You remember the day you married. Not the exact date. No one had a calendar. But the moment. She wore a borrowed shawl. You wore your father's belt. The priest was drunk and fell asleep halfway through the ceremony. You kissed her anyway. She rolled her eyes and said, "Fine." You've been saying fine to each other ever since, in that special, stubborn, lifelong way. Tonight, she sets aside the socks and pulls the blanket tighter around you both. Her head rests on your shoulder, and for a while, you say nothing. There's no need. The quiet is comfortable. Your youngest stirs in her sleep, mutters something about onions, and settles again. The pig grunts. Your wife shifts slightly. "Do you think we'll have enough wood for tomorrow?" "Maybe," you say, "if no one burns the stool again." She sighs. That stool was older than the priest. It was also dry. She laughs quietly. "You're lucky I love you." You nod. "I'm aware." The wind outside flutters the shutters. The fire sighs in the hearth. And in the hush that follows, you press your forehead to hers, just briefly. No one sees. No one needs to, because here, under this patched-up blanket, in a house that creaks and leaks and smells vaguely of pig, you have everything you need. Her fingers find yours. They're cold. You hold on anyway. The church bells don't ring in winter, not regularly. The rope freezes, the clapper sticks. Sometimes the priest forgets what day it is. But today, a slow, low dong echoes over the village, soft and distant like someone banging a pot under a blanket. It's Sunday. You groan and roll over. Your back cracks. Your wife groans too, but not out of piety, out of dread. Church means getting up early, washing faces, straightening tunics, and stuffing feet into boots that have definitely not dried since last week. Still, you go. Not because you're especially devout, but because the church is warm. Warmer than home anyway. It's one of the few buildings in the village with thick stone walls, a real roof, and enough bodies packed inside to push the temperature from miserable to tolerable. The children grumble as you dress them. One puts her shirt on backward and refuses to fix it. Another insists on bringing a doll made of twine and burnt acorns. You allow it. There are no rules in winter fashion. Outside, snowflakes drift in lazy spirals, fat and wet. You wrap your cloak tight, grab the fire-warmed stone from the hearth, and tuck it into your satchel. Little comforts matter. The church looms at the top of the hill, grey, square, and faintly smoking from the chimney. You join the others trudging up the path, everyone looking like bundles of rags with feet. You nod greetings, grunts, coughs. No one wastes energy on words today. Inside, the air is heavy with wax and old incense. Candles flicker from every ledge. The warmth hits you like a slow exhale. You shuffle into a pew, already half full of neighbors trying to hide their shivering behind prayers. Your wife takes the children up front. They huddle near the altar candles, pretending to be devout. You find a seat beside your cousin, who smells like damp cheese and breathes audibly through one nostril. The priest appears, robed, red-eyed, and more bundled than anyone. He begins to speak in his sing-song Latin, the words curling like steam into the rafters. You don't understand much, but you nod along at the right moments. So does everyone else. It's not really about the sermon. It's about heat, about being together. And okay, the bread helps. After the chants and the muttered prayers, he brings out the basket. Holy bread, slightly stale, still warm. You get one. You savor it. The rest of the service is a blur of rising and sitting, coughing and sniffing. Someone sneezes into their hood. A baby starts wailing. Buttercup, who followed the children in, lets out a snort near the font and is gently escorted back outside by 3 giggling boys. Eventually, it ends. You leave the church blinking, slightly warmer, spiritually intact, and still a little hungry. On the walk home, your wife links her arm through yours. I liked that part about turning the other cheek. He was talking about sinners, you reply. Well, you did burn the stool. I was cold. So was the stool, she says with a smirk. Historians often suggest that religion was the central thread of peasant life. Maybe. But from where you stand, it's not just about salvation. It's about candlelight, company, the echo of song in stone halls when the world outside feels like it's trying to erase you. You reach home and rekindle the fire. The children unwrap their cloaks and fling themselves onto the straw pile. Buttercup trots in after them, clearly pleased with her outing. She finds the warm spot and resumes her nap like she never left. You sit near the fire with your wife, sharing a crust of bread, a nod, and a quiet moment. Do you think saints get cold? She asks. You think about it. Probably not, but if they did, they'd sit near the candles too. She smiles. Then we're halfway there. The wind whistles outside, but the bell no longer tolls. The sky dims. You pull the blanket tighter and lean against her shoulder. And just like that, you feel a little holier. You wake to the sound of something rustling above your head. Again. But this time, it isn't rats or pigeons. It's something softer. A bundle of dried rosemary tied with a strip of cloth, hanging from the beam over your sleeping mat. You blink at it, confused for a moment, then remember, your wife hung it there last night. To keep the bad spirits away, she said. And maybe the rats too. You snorted at the time. But now, in the low morning light, it feels like a small kindness. The room still smells faintly of herbs, smoke, and pig, but at least the rosemary adds something hopeful. Superstition runs deep in your village. It's not just prayers and saints. It's charms, tokens, whispers, and old women muttering to themselves as they scatter salt across doorsteps. You used to laugh at it all, until last year's blight, when the only field that survived had a dead crow buried at its center. Coincidence? Maybe. But you still buried one in yours the next planting season, just in case. Today, the wise woman visits again. Not for sickness this time, but because your middle child woke crying about a shadow on the wall that whispered her name. Could have been a dream. Could have been your cousin snoring through his nose again. Still, no one questions it. The wise woman arrives with her usual flair, wrapped in cloaks, feathers braided into her hair, clutching a sack full of dried roots and muttered warnings. The kids are in awe. Buttercup refuses to make eye contact. She circles the room slowly, muttering in a sing-song voice, brushing the walls with a smudge stick made of dried sage and something else. Something that smells suspiciously like moss and regret. Bad energy in this corner, she says, pointing near the slop bucket. No surprise there, you reply. She glares at you, tosses a pinch of powdered mushroom in the fire, and says something in a language that doesn't even sound like mumbling anymore. The smoke turns blue for a moment. The fire crackles. Your daughter gasps. Your cousin sneezes. There, she says, much better. Historians often disagree on the role of magic and superstition in peasant life. Some claim it was a harmless comfort, a way to cope with the unknown. Others insist it was dangerous nonsense, holding back medicine and reason. You think they both miss the point. When your walls are thin and your belly's thinner, you turn to something, even if it's just a charm made of twigs shaped like a star, tucked under your straw bed, and blessed with 3 whispered wishes. That afternoon, your wife boils water with rosemary, sage, and a dried apple peel. She calls it cleansing tea. It tastes like grass and old shoes. But everyone drinks it, even the dog. You hang fresh garlic on the doorframe. For what? Spirits? Rats? Bandits? All of the above. Your neighbor hangs a cracked mirror on his gate to reflect evil away. Another paints an eye above her threshold with berry juice. Your cousin swears by the 7-stone rule, 7 pebbles lined up on the windowsill to keep bad dreams out. You caught Buttercup eating his last week. He cried. You find yourself muttering little phrases under your breath now. Old words passed down from your grandmother. You don't know what they mean, but they feel like armor. Even the priest, with all his talk of saints and scripture, leaves a horseshoe nailed behind the altar, quietly, where no one can see it, but everyone knows it's there. At night, the wind moans around the eaves. You light a tallow candle, draw a circle in the soot around the hearth, and sleep with a dried flower in your pocket. Why? Because winter is long, and warmth isn't always fire. Sometimes, it's the feeling that something, even if it's just a string of words, a crooked charm, or a bundle of rosemary, is standing guard while you sleep. You close your eyes and dream softly. The argument starts over a blanket. Not a particularly good one. It's more holes than fabric. Smells vaguely of mildew and goat, and has a tendency to slide off in the middle of the night. But in this house, it's gold. There are 6 of you sharing 3 blankets. That math doesn't work even in summer, let alone now when the frost creeps up your legs like a curious cat looking for somewhere to nap. Your cousin claims the blanket by ancestral right, which means he slept under it last week. Your wife reminds him she gave birth to 3 of the current occupants of this house and therefore wins. The children throw in their opinions, most of which involve unfair distribution and suspicious swapping during the night. You sit by the fire, watching it unfold like a poorly staged play, clutching the other blanket that you definitely are not giving up. You already sacrificed your socks to your eldest earlier this week. You're drawing the line at this one scrap of warmth. Eventually, a system is reached. Everyone gets one corner, and the middle is shared by whoever's feet are coldest. Tonight, that's your daughter, who proudly announces this fact by pressing her icy toes against your spine at bedtime. You gasp. She giggles. The cousin sulks. Buttercup snores. Blankets, in theory, should be plentiful. In practice, they're expensive, fragile, and often end up patched so many times they resemble quilts made by someone playing a joke. You've mended the same one 6 times. Your wife mended it 4 more. It now features a sleeve from an old tunic, a strip of curtain, and something you suspect was once a saddlebag. And yet, it's precious. It's warm, mostly, unless it's damp. Then it becomes a cold, smelly sponge you huddle under out of loyalty, not logic. Historians sometimes reference how medieval peasants used straw, furs, and cloaks for bedding. Rarely do they mention the blanket politics. The silent wars waged at midnight over half an inch of exposed shoulder. The stealthy rolls, the quiet tugs, the bitter realization that someone's taken your corner and wrapped themselves like a smug caterpillar. You've gotten creative over time. You once sewed 2 scraps together to make what you called the family worm. One long tube of cloth everyone could crawl into like hibernating squirrels. It worked for a while, until someone sneezed and the whole thing unraveled. Now you use layers. First comes the straw, flattened and prickly. Then the old canvas sack, then cloaks, then blankets if they're dry, then pigs if they're agreeable. Tonight, the air is colder than usual. You can see your breath. The fire is low. You pass a few warmed stones under the covers, whispering warnings to the children not to kick them out onto the floor like last time. You curl up with your wife, your knees bumping hers. You both tug at opposite ends of the blanket until it settles into a grudging compromise across your chests. And then silence, but not for long. Your cousin coughs. Your daughter rolls. The pig shifts and lets out a sound you try very hard not to interpret. Someone groans. Then, just as sleep is about to find you, someone lets the blanket slip. A collective shiver ripples through the pile of bodies. Accusations fly. Hands fumble. The blanket is dragged in 3 directions. You contemplate letting them fight it out and quietly stealing what remains. Eventually, peace is restored. The blanket, rumpled and exhausted, lays across you all like a weary mediator. The fire flickers one last time before it settles into a red glow. You stare at the ceiling, tracing the lines of the beams above you, soot dark and familiar. Next year, you whisper, I'm getting my own blanket. Your wife chuckles. You said that last year, and I meant it. Buttercup snores louder. You pull the edge of the blanket over your ear and let your eyes close, knowing full well someone will yank it away again before morning. But for now, just for now, it's enough. It starts with a sniffle. Just one, sharp, wet, and suspicious. You glance over. Your middle child wipes her nose with her sleeve and gives you a brave smile. You raise an eyebrow. She grins wider, which is never a good sign. Turn. By evening, she's shivering. You tuck her under the warmest blanket. Yes, that one, the one that sparked the blanket war, and place a heated stone near her feet. Your wife sits beside her, murmuring softly, spooning a weak onion broth into her mouth between sneezes. Illness is a winter companion you never invite, but it always finds its way in. One sniffle becomes a cough. One cough becomes a chorus. Before long, everyone's taking turns hacking into the smoky air like it's a competition. Your cousin's already bundled in the corner, wheezing through one nostril, convinced he's dying. Again. He claims it's the lung chill, which sounds dramatic, but probably means he slept with wet socks again. You warned him. Your wife fetches her herb bundle, dried chamomile, elderflower, and a handful of bark that smells like something a goat refused to eat. She boils it all into a tea so bitter you wince just smelling it. The children make faces, but they drink. You do too, mostly because she's watching. By morning, your daughter has a fever, not high, but worrisome. Her cheeks flush pink, and she's mumbling about dancing goats. You send for the wise woman. Again, she arrives, cloaked and muttering, dragging behind her the same ragged basket of herbs, bones, and mystery. Buttercup grunts upon seeing her, and promptly waddles to the far side of the room. She's got the winter shiver, the wise woman says, after examining your daughter's forehead, eyes, and toes. But she'll keep. You breathe out slowly. Your wife grips your hand under the blanket. The wise woman begins her ritual. She boils roots in your best pot. Yes, the one you use for porridge. You wince. The mixture fizzes, smells like roasted socks and sage. She ladles it out carefully, one spoonful at a time, chanting as she works. Then she pulls out a pouch. Dried mushrooms. She grinds them with a rock and mixes them into a paste, which she smears behind your daughter's ears. Why there, you ask? She shrugs. Where else? You don't argue. She leaves behind a bundle of herbs to hang above the sleeping mat and a wax-sealed packet of something labeled for deep coughs. It looks like tree sap, tastes like mold, works like magic, or coincidence. Either way, by nightfall your daughter is sleeping quietly, her breath slow and steady. You sit near the fire, exhausted. Your wife leans against you. Your cousin moans softly in the corner, clutching a rag to his forehead like a knight dying in battle. Should I call the wise woman for him too, you ask? No, your wife says. He just wants soup. You nod. Then he can make it himself. Historians debate whether folk healers like the wise woman were truly effective or just a comfort. From where you sit, the line doesn't matter. She came. She brought warmth. She gave you something to do, and in winter, that's more powerful than most cures. The next day, your daughter wakes up asking for porridge. You nearly cry from relief. You give her 2 spoonfuls, the biggest portion of the morning, and pretend it isn't your share. Your cousin, miraculously healed, offers to stand watch while you nap. You say no. You've seen him sleep on watch before. He once missed a sheep walking through the kitchen. Still, the house is quieter. The fire crackles. The child is warm. The herbs hang above the bed, swaying gently in the draught. Outside, the snow falls again, steady, soft, and silent. You lie down beside your family and close your eyes, whispering a thank you, not to saints this time, or to the fire, or even to the wise woman, but to the fact that you've survived another sickness, and you're all still here, together. The fire's crackling. The room smells like old wood, boiled herbs, and someone's feet, probably your cousin's. It's evening, and you're doing one of the most important things anyone can do during a medieval winter. You're tending the hearth. You've already added the driest logs you could find. Well, the driest ones that didn't come from the roof. And now you crouch low, poking the embers just enough to get a lively flame. But not so much that you send sparks flying into the pig's haybed again. You learned that lesson the hard way. Buttercup didn't squeal. She just looked betrayed. You don't need that kind of judgment from a pig. The hearth is the soul of your home. It's where everything happens. Meals, warmth, gossip, arguments, healing, praying, napping, daydreaming, and once, a disastrous attempt at singing. All of it circles the fire. Your wife sits beside you, peeling a turnip with the dull side of a knife. The kids play some sort of game with pebbles and a piece of broken pottery. Your cousin dozes against the wall, muttering something about Matilda and fermented cheese. And then there's the gossip. Because let's be honest, nothing fuels a hearth fire like a little local scandal. Did you hear about Edith? Your wife says, barely looking up. You shake your head. Caught her man sneaking over to Martha's barn last night. You raise an eyebrow. To do what? Well, she smirks. Either steal wood or warm his hands somewhere inappropriate. You snort. The children pretend not to listen. They're absolutely listening. Gossip in the village moves faster than rats through your grain bin. And the hearth is where it all gets retold, exaggerated, corrected, denied, and exaggerated again. It's not malicious, not most of the time. It's survival, a way to stay connected, informed, entertained. Sometimes, it's also how you find out important things, like who has spare firewood, or who found a fox track near the henhouse, or who's hiding extra dried apples under the floorboards. That would be Martha. She's not subtle. Historians often overlook the social function of the hearth. They focus on fire for heat and cooking, but rarely for talking. But here, where the nights are long and the dark lasts half the day, the hearth is your theatre, your town hall, your confessional. You turn the spit slowly. Tonight it's bread dough twisted on a stick. It'll taste like ash and hope. The kids are excited anyway. Your wife leans in close. I heard the miller's apprentice wants to marry that girl with the lazy eye. You raise an eyebrow. The one who tried to milk a rooster. She swears it was dark. You laugh and it feels good, deep in the belly, warm in a way that fire alone can't manage. Outside, the wind howls. The shutters rattle. The snow is falling again. But here, inside this flickering little circle of heat and stories, you feel safe. You tell your own tale next. Something half true about the time you chased a thief out of the barn with a frying pan. Your cousin wakes up mid-snore, just in time to add a completely unnecessary detail involving a goose. The children laugh until they hiccup. The bread turns golden, charred at the edges, but edible. You share it around, and for a few minutes, no one speaks. You chew, you sigh, you chew again. Then your daughter pipes up. Tell us about the fire that danced. You remember the story. A spark that jumped from hearth to hearth, house to house, lighting them in a line like candles on a saint's altar. You tell it slowly, voice low, making the shadows flicker on the walls. By the end, everyone's quiet again. The fire crackles. Your wife leans her head on your shoulder. Buttercup lets out a long, satisfied snort. The children yawn. Your cousin resumes snoring. You add one last log to the fire. It catches slowly, a soft flame curling up the bark like a yawn. You sit back, content, hands warm, heart warmer. And as you close your eyes, you think, maybe the hearth isn't just where the warmth is. Maybe it's where life is. It begins as a low sound, deep, far off, riding the wind like a secret. You're stacking kindling near the doorway when you hear it again. A howl, not the wind, not a dog. Longer, thinner, full of teeth. Your hands freeze. There's a pause, then another cry, closer this time. You glance at your wife. She's standing near the hearth, ladle suspended over the pot. Her eyes flick to yours. She heard it too. You walk to the window, really just a wooden flap you've carved a peek hole into, and press your face to the cold crack. Beyond the yard, the forest edge shimmers under the moonlight. Trees swaying, snow glowing, still. But the sound comes again, closer now. A wolf. You shut the flap gently, not slamming it. No need to wake the children just yet. Not unless you see eyes. In the corner, your cousin is stirring. Was that the wind? He mutters, still half asleep. Sure, you lie. He pulls the blanket higher. Tell it to keep it down. The fire crackles. You sit near it, listening, waiting. The thing about wolves is, they're not stupid. They don't charge in howling like hungry ghosts. They scout, they circle, they test, and they know when you're vulnerable. You've seen them take sheep in the night. You've heard stories of children taken too. Not often, not close, but often enough. The pig grunts softly. She hears it too. You check the door. It's barred, though not convincingly. A plank wedged through a couple of loops hammered into the frame. If a wolf really wanted in, it might take 2 good pushes and a snarl. Still, you add a second log across it. You toss a boot in front of the crack at the bottom. Not because it will help, but because it might make you feel like you've done something. Your wife lights another candle. One near the window, one near the sleeping children. Superstition says wolves don't like firelight. You're not sure if that's true, but tonight, it's enough. Historians often downplay the role wolves played in peasant life. Overblown, some say. Exaggerated to teach children obedience. Maybe. But there's nothing exaggerated about the way your heart beats faster when the howls stretch through the night like a thread pulling your breath tight. You've seen tracks before. Long, clean prints in the snow, 4-toed with a pad in the center, larger than you expect. You once followed them until they disappeared into the trees. Then you turned back, quickly. Tonight the sound fades again, fainter, further. Then nothing. The wind returns, softer now, brushing against the shutters like fingertips. You let out a breath. Not all the way, just enough. The children stay asleep. Your cousin, still snoring. Buttercup curls tighter, but doesn't move. You throw another log on the fire, slow and steady, not wanting to break the silence. The flames catch with a whisper. Your wife sits beside you, her arm brushing yours. Could have been a fox, she says. You nod. Could have been the priest singing again. She chuckles. Worse than wolves. You stay there, the both of you, watching the shadows flicker on the wall. The fear doesn't vanish, but it dulls, like the blade of a knife left out in the snow too long. In time, your muscles loosen. Your breathing slows. Eventually, you lie down. You don't sleep right away, though. You lie awake for a while, listening, not for the wind, but for the quiet that follows something hungry. And when sleep comes, it comes light and alert, with one ear open for the sound of padded feet on packed snow. When the thaw finally comes, it doesn't arrive with trumpets. There's no grand unveiling, no chorus of birds or sunshine crashing through the clouds like a knight in golden armor. No, when spring peeks its nose into your village, it does so cautiously, like a guest who isn't quite sure if they're welcome. You notice it first in the drip. A slow, rhythmic plink from the corner of the roof where the snow has finally surrendered. You don't even register it at first. Then you realize it's water, moving, not frozen, not stuck in place like a forgotten thought. You step outside and breathe. Still cold, still grey, but something's different. The snow has retreated just a little, exposing tufts of brown beneath it. Mud, really. Ugly, slushy mud. But you stare at it like it's treasure. Because in winter, anything that isn't white or dead is sacred. The children notice it next. They start poking around the edges of the yard, giggling at patches of grass as if they're rare jewels. Your youngest holds up a stick with a worm clinging to it like it's discovered fire. Buttercup, true to form, finds the first puddle and sits in it. She's a visionary. Inside, the fire still burns. But now it's not life support. It's luxury. You let it die down a little during the day. Your wife opens the window shutter a crack, just enough to let in a sliver of air that doesn't immediately hurt your lungs. And then, birds, just one at first. A warble, then two, then a whole choir you forgot existed. Their songs are strange, foreign, like music from a dream you barely remember. You stand there, head tilted, letting the sound trickle in. Your cousin emerges from his corner like a man waking from a curse. He blinks, scratches, sniffs and says, "Smells wet." It does. Wet straw, wet dirt, wet pig. But also, hope. The thaw is messy. Everything melts at once. The paths turn to mush. The well overflows with slush. The roof leaks in 3 new places. But you don't mind. You'll take mud over snow any day. Historians argue whether peasants celebrated the coming of spring. Some say they were too busy preparing fields and repairing damage to rejoice. Others claim early festivals and rituals marked the change of seasons. You don't need a festival. You have this, the sound of meltwater, the first green shoots nosing their way out of the thawed earth, the subtle shift in the wind that no longer bites quite as hard. Your wife starts clearing the hearth, sweeping out months of ash and burnt bone. She hums as she works. You've missed her humming. The children drag out last year's baskets, frayed and soft from too many seasons, and begin collecting. Rocks, twigs, anything that looks vaguely like not winter. You take a shovel and begin to clear the path to the barn, though it's mostly futility. The mud sucks at your boots like it wants to keep you. You push through anyway. By the end, you're soaked, filthy, and grinning. You're outside, and no one's yelling at you to come in before you freeze. That night, you leave the window open a finger's width. Just enough to hear the frogs beginning to stir down in the marsh. Just enough to let the fire's glow spill out into a world that's starting to blink awake. You huddle under the blanket, still patched, still shared, still fought over. But tonight, it feels lighter. Spring hasn't arrived, not fully, but it's coming, like breath returning to cold lungs. And in your bones, in your hands, in your chest, you know, you've made it. The mud becomes a monster. You'd almost forgotten how spring's arrival wasn't a finish line. It was the start of another struggle. A wetter, stickier, sink your boot down to the ankle struggle. And now it's here in full force, slapping against your legs every time you try to walk to the barn, like it holds a grudge against your socks. You wake up with the sound of Buttercup squealing. She's managed to get stuck halfway between the pen and the trough, legs flailing like a tipped stool. You and your cousin haul her out with grunts and one misplaced foot that now belongs to the earth. Your boot stays behind. You say goodbye to it. It had a good run. Mud season, they call it. The time between the melt and the first real sprouts. When everything is soggy, nothing dries, and the world smells like manure, mold, and mild disappointment. You'd think this would make you miserable. And sure, part of you longs for dry ground. But there's something oddly comforting about this mess, because it means things are waking up. You scrape mud off your tunic and squint at the sky. Clouds still hang heavy, but the light is different now. More yellow, less grey. The kind of light that might, just might, be warm in a few weeks. The children stomp puddles like it's a sport. They're soaked to the knees, filthy and smiling. One of them finds a snail and insists it's a sign of good fortune. You nod. Why not? Inside, the hearth is still lit, but you let it burn lower during the day. The walls weep with condensation. Your wife opens the door for a while, muttering about letting the ghosts out. You're not sure what she means, but the air smells cleaner afterward. Repairs begin. You check the roof, again. Still leaking, but less dramatically now. You patch the worst spots with straw and hope. Your cousin tries to fix the chicken coop, but mostly just argues with the chickens. Buttercup, having survived her muddy ordeal, rolls triumphantly in a fresher patch. You've stopped trying to keep her clean. She's living her truth. Historians talk about the agricultural rhythm of the medieval year, the cycle of planting and harvest, of soil and sweat. But they often gloss over this part, the mess between seasons, the limbo where the world isn't frozen, but it isn't blooming either. When everything is possible, but nothing is easy, you begin turning the garden's soil. It's heavy, stubborn, slick. You grunt with every shovel load, and the blisters bloom quickly. But there's something deeply satisfying in the work. Your body remembers the motion, even if your muscles protest. Your wife brings a bucket of saved seeds, dried and wrapped carefully in old linen, barley, peas, turnips, a few sad beans. Each one feels like a promise. The children help, sort of. They bury seeds too deep or throw them at each other when your back is turned. But you let them. They're learning. You were the same once. Evenings are quieter now. The darkness still comes early, but not as early. You sit by the hearth with your feet drying by the fire and the smell of turned earth clinging to your skin. You talk about planting, about what might grow, about what didn't last year, and what you hope for this time. Your cousin pipes up with a wild plan to try flax again. Your wife raises an eyebrow. The flax that turned purple and tried to escape the barrel. Creative flax, he says proudly. You laugh. The fire crackles. Someone hums. Outside, frogs sing in the marsh. Birds argue in the trees. The wind no longer bites. It brushes. You fall asleep with sore arms, sore legs, and a strange sense of peace. Because this, muddy and awkward as it is, means the cold has passed. Not forever, not permanently, but enough. And now you dig, because digging means something's coming. Because mud may be a mess, but it's the kind that grows things. The green comes slowly, then all at once. One morning, you step outside and realize the world has color again. Not just the soggy browns and grey smudges of thaw season, but green. Real green. Sharp, young, reckless green. The kind that bursts through the mud like it's been holding its breath all winter. Your daughter runs barefoot through the grass, giggling like a fool. You yell at her to put shoes on, then promptly do the same. It's wet, it's cold, it's glorious. The trees, those stoic skeletons you've stared at all winter, are finally beginning to fuzz. Buds like tiny fists uncurl from every branch. The air smells different now, damp still, but lighter, like the forest is exhaling. The fields call to you, loudly. You shoulder your spade, adjust the cloth around your waist, and walk toward them like a knight heading into battle, with considerably less armor and significantly worse boots. Your cousin is already there, humming an off-key tune and pretending he knows how furrows work. Don't make them crooked this time, you say. He shrugs, no promises. Together, you work. The ground is stubborn, but softer than it was. The old furrows are barely visible now, erased by snow and time. You carve new ones, straighter, deeper, wiser, maybe. Your wife arrives with the seed bag, worn and patched. You watch her dip her hand inside and scatter the first handful like she's feeding birds. Each seed arcs through the air with the weight of hope behind it. The children follow, dropping in peas, laughing at worms, and generally planting more mischief than vegetables. And so the ritual begins, this ancient, aching, beautiful thing called growing. Historians describe this time as the agricultural season resuming. They make it sound clinical, but for you, it's sacred. Not just work, not just food, but rebirth. Each time your fingers press a seed into the soil, you're telling the earth, I believe in you again. Evenings stretch longer now. You find yourself working past the usual hour, losing track of time until the light finally fades and your arms can't lift the hoe anymore. Your wife calls you back in with a whistle. The children shout. The pig grunts. The sky turns gold. Inside, you still light the fire, but mostly for cooking now. The real heat comes from movement, from sunlight, from the joy of doing. The house feels bigger somehow, less crowded. Maybe it's the open door. Maybe it's your mood. You talk more. You plan more. You joke about fixing the roof before it rains again. Your cousin claims he saw a bee. The kids pretend to be butterflies. You sleep deeply now. Not out of exhaustion, but satisfaction. The kind that comes with purpose, with promise. In dreams, you see the garden full, lush, buzzing with life. You know it won't all come true. There'll be blight and bugs and that one goat who keeps breaking in. But still, the dream clings to you in the morning like dew. And so each day you rise. You dig, you plant, you water, you wait. And through it all, you carry a quiet joy, because the cold is behind you now, and the earth, after all its silence, is finally speaking again. The days are longer now, measured not by candles or firelight, but by the sun that lingers just a little more each evening, like it's reluctant to leave. You wake without shivering. That alone feels like a miracle. The children are already outside by the time you finish your morning bread heel. They're building something, a wobbly fence, a pretend cart, a trap for imaginary beasts. You don't ask. You're just glad they're not bundled like laundry anymore. You walk the garden slowly, knees cracking, hands behind your back like some kind of lord inspecting his domain. The sprouts are real now, tiny green tongues licking the air. Beans, barley, even the turnips have shown their stubborn little leaves. You crouch down, press your fingers into the soil. It's warm. And there it is again, that quiet, wordless joy that sneaks into your chest, settling in with a soft sigh. The house, once a cave of cold breath and layered blankets, is now a place of movement. The door stays open most of the day. The hearth, once the unyielding center of your universe, is down to embers. Still lit, but less urgent. More companion than savior. Your wife has begun to clean, truly clean. Beating rugs, scrubbing the wooden bench, chasing dust into corners it had claimed for months. Your cousin sharpens tools outside, humming tunelessly between strokes. Even Buttercup has a spring in her step, or at least a wobble less tragic than usual. You share meals outside now. Just bread, a smear of cheese, maybe a wild onion or two. But everything tastes brighter under the sky. The children eat with their fingers. You don't stop them. At night, the stars return. Not the fuzzy winter dots you saw through shutter cracks, but real stars. Sharp, proud, endless. You lie in the grass with your daughter, both of you sticky with dirt and sweat, and she points out constellations she mostly makes up. You name them with her. The Turnip King. The Chicken Who Flew. Big Buttercup. She falls asleep against your shoulder. You carry her inside. She's heavier than last year. You smile as your back protests. There are no more howls now. No more snow at the door. No more frozen water buckets or blanket wars or muttered prayers over weak tea. Historians still argue how medieval peasants marked the end of winter. Some say it passed unceremoniously. Just another turn of the wheel. Others suggest there were rites, bonfires, dances in fields half-tilled. But here, in your little world, the celebration is quiet. It's the act of planting without gloves, of sleeping with just one blanket, of hearing birds and not flinching. It's life returning, not in a shout, but a whisper. You sit by the fire one last time before bed, not because it's needed, but because it's there. It's been there through it all. You thank it, silently, just a nod. Your wife kisses your temple. Your cousin snores. The pig sighs like a queen in a warm bath. And you close your eyes knowing you made it through, together. And now, as the fire fades to the faintest red and the air around you stills, let yourself rest in that knowing. You've walked through the hardest season, the one that takes your warmth, your light, and sometimes your hope. And you emerged, a little weathered, yes, but whole. The world no longer bites. The walls no longer weep. The ground beneath your feet no longer threatens to swallow you. You've seen the frost retreat, the mud soften, and the first sprouts brave enough to rise from the soil. You've heard the wolves, feared the silence, fed the fire with your last splinters of faith. And now you hear birds instead, laughter, breath. Your body still remembers the cold, but your bones begin to forgive it. So as you lie there now, wrapped in the warmth of blankets once fought over, let yourself sink into the softness of this moment. Let your chest rise and fall with the rhythm of the hearth's last sigh. Let your thoughts drift like smoke toward lighter things, green fields, full baskets, quiet days to come, because this is what survival feels like. Not grand, not loud, but tender. It's the creak of a wooden bench in a sunlit room. It's the brush of wind without teeth. It's knowing that tomorrow, when you wake, the ground will still be soft, and the sky just a little brighter. You are here, and that is everything. And now, as we let the fire burn low and the night settle in around us, it's time to pull the blanket a little tighter and ease into the quiet. You've made it, somehow, through another day in the hard, frost-bitten life of a medieval peasant. Not with comfort, and certainly not with ease, but with grit, with stubborn hope, and with just enough warmth to survive until tomorrow. And maybe that's all anyone could really ask for back then. You've crouched beside embers like they were sacred. You've patched holes in a roof that has long since stopped caring about staying upright. You've huddled beside livestock, not because it was charming, but because it was necessary. Pigs, chickens, goats. Sometimes they were your roommates, sometimes your heaters, and sometimes the only thing keeping your children from waking up blue-lipped and quiet. You've scraped together meals from onions, oats, and anything that didn't bite back. You've cooked with smoke in your eyes, stirred soup with spoons marked by hungry teeth, and shared every last bite because the idea of keeping it all for yourself. That never crossed your mind. Not in a place where community wasn't just a nice idea, it was survival. You've dodged roof drips and shivered in the draft by the door. You've stuffed straw between the beams until your fingers bled, pretended a hot rock was a miracle, and watched your youngest smile with lips that still worked, even when her toes didn't. And maybe, as silly as it sounds, you've even learned to laugh through it. Because sometimes, that's all you've got. A rat dances in the thatch. A pig steals your sleeping spot. Your cousin mumbles nonsense about a ghost named Matilda. And you laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's familiar. Because in a life this harsh, humor is armor. There's something deeply human about this kind of living. Something raw, stripped of conveniences, stripped of pride, and left with nothing but your instincts, your love for the people beside you, and a determination not to let the cold win, not tonight. And still, winter comes, relentless, howling, clever. It sneaks in through cracks. It rides in on your breath. It sets up camp in your bones. But so do you. You push back. Every log you burn, every scrap of clothing you mend, every laugh you share, it's defiance. It's a whispered, stubborn, not yet. Historians argue about a lot of things, about how cold it really got, how much the peasants suffered, how much they shared versus hoarded. But none of them lived on a dirt floor with a blanket made of last season's regrets. None of them looked a wolf in the eye and thought, could be worse, at least he's warm. You've lived it now, even if just in your imagination. You've walked the frozen path before dawn. You've felt the sting of wind on your cheeks and the weight of cold that settles in like a second skin. You've squinted through wood smoke and smiled at your child's delight over a scrap of fleece. You've traded pride for proximity and dignity for just one more night of heat. And somehow, it's made you stronger. There's something beautiful in that. Not pretty, maybe, but beautiful. Because there's a strange grace to enduring. A quiet poetry in the way you made do. A kind of hymn, sung not with words but with acts. The sharing of a blanket, the splitting of a carrot, the repairing of a roof, while your hands shake from the cold. Even in the worst of nights, you found a way to light the fire again. Maybe that's what survival really is. Not some grand act of heroism. Just staying. Just showing up again tomorrow. Just waking up, knowing it's going to be miserable and getting up anyway. Just saying, okay, winter, not today. And slowly, with time, the ice will loosen. The days will grow a little longer. The roof will dry out. The straw will be replaced. You'll plant again. You'll hope again. You'll sweat instead of shiver. The pigs will go back outside. Maybe even your cousin will finally go home. But even then, you'll remember the cold. The way it pressed into you. The way it made you small and strong at the same time. The way it reminded you of everything you do have. A fire, a family, a laugh, a chance. And maybe, just maybe, that memory will make spring feel a little sweeter. So for now, just rest. Let the snow fall outside. Let the wind do what it does. You've built your defenses. You've earned your sleep. Let the fire crackle a little longer. Let the pig snore softly beside the hearth. Let your breath slow. Because you, stubborn, frostbitten, sleep-deprived you made it through the night. And that's no small thing. Good night, sleep warm.